Hey, it's Jess. Welcome back. Today I'm here with another Way Back Wednesday where I will be talking about all the books that I read in November of 2020. Looking back at my Goodreads, I read 5 books in the month of November. One of them was a reread, the rest were new. So, the first book that I read was Horns by Joe Hill. And if you don't know, Joe Hill is Stephen King's son. This is the first book of his that I had read. I saw it at the library. I knew that there was a movie based on it. Daniel Radcliffe's in the movie. Still haven't watched the movie, but I know there's a movie based on this book. Basically, in the book, our main character wakes up one morning and discovers he has horns on his head. And these horns make it possible to hear other people's thoughts, but what he's hearing is kind of like their deepest, darkest secrets. And I think his girlfriend had been murdered, and so he's trying to use like previously, not recently or anything. He's trying to use his newfound powers to kind of solve. Everyone thinks that he killed her, and he's trying to solve the murder. I think. I probably should have read the synopsis of this book again, but again, it's been 4 years since I read this book, so I can't remember a lot of it. I really enjoyed it. I don't think I even read the last chapter. Like, I got to the climax happened, and then I think I had to return it to the library, so I just never finished it. But what I read, I enjoyed. Joe Hill, very wordy, very much like his father. I have read a few more of his works, which I'll talk about in future videos. But based on this first book, I'm not as big of a fan of Joe Hill as I am of Stephen King. So you'll have to stay tuned to see if my feelings about that change. The next book I read was Cinder by Marissa Meyer, and this is the Lunar Chronicles #1. It is a young adult fantasy novel in a series called the Lunar Chronicles. And Cinder is a retelling of Cinderella, where Cinderella is a partial cyborg, and she works in the market, and then the prince comes and finds her, and her stepsisters are not cyborgs, and they steal her foot because that's the part of her that's robotic, which is why the picture, the cover is like the ankle with the robots inside. I really liked this. It's, a nice, easy fantasy read. I like reading young adult things sometimes. I was really intrigued. I did go and read the second book, and I've picked up the third book, which is Cress, like 3 times, and I've never actually read it. So hopefully soon, I might just reread this entire series, because I did really like Cinder. I read it really quickly. I enjoyed the characters. I remember you're introduced to some new characters at the end of the book, and I wanted to know what those characters were, like get to know them better. Once again, just another thing that I've never actually finished. So put it on the list, maybe this year, maybe next year, because I'm starting to get a lot of series that I've started that I probably need to restart because I haven't finished them. They're stacking up, but I would put the Lunar Chronicles on that list because I do want to read it. I do want to find out what happens in the whole series. I almost said Chronicles. But overall, I enjoyed Cinder, and I did read the next one. And you'll hear about that in a future video. The next book I read was Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. This is the second book in the Hunger Games trilogy. This is my favorite, and this was also a reread. I had read the Hunger Games, I think back in May. I don't know. It was in one of my previous videos. I love the Hunger Games books, and I talked all about them in that last video. Catching Fire, definitely my favorite. I think the arena is the coolest. I love the characters that you're introduced to. I love the building of the relationships with these characters. And I don't know, it's just, I always read it really quickly, and I always get really excited. Every time I read it, I've probably read it like 3 or 4 times just because I enjoy it so much. And I think it's really good writing. Definitely my favorite out of the trilogy. And I highly recommend, obviously you need to read The Hunger Games before you read Catching Fire, because otherwise you'll be very confused. Or you could just watch the movies. I feel like these movies are fairly good adaptations of the books. And yeah, even the second movie was pretty cool, good. I like how they did the arena. Again, that's always my favorite arena, and I liked being able to see it like on the big screen. So, highly, highly recommend reading all of these books, but definitely checking out Catching Fire. The next book I read was The Obesity Code by Jason Fung. I'm not sure how to say his last name. This is a nonfiction book. I don't really remember very much about it. It was a nonfiction book about being obese. I'm sure it had to do with like macros and metabolism and everything like that. As far as like habits books or reading books about weight and weight management, this one I immediately forgot versus some of the other books I've read. I remember parts of them. So it was worth checking out. I always like to read a nonfiction, always like to hear someone else's, perspectives on obesity and weight management and everything like that. But this one wasn't very memorable for me. And the last book that I read was Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer. This is the 5th book in the Twilight universe. It is a retelling of Twilight from Edward's perspective. I have read all the Twilight books. I went to all of the movies at midnight premieres. I've never been like a huge Twilight fan. I am in a couple Twilight groups on Facebook, and I do enjoy, I enjoy watching the movies. They're not very good. I haven't read the books in forever. I read them a couple times though. Not very good writing, but just fun. I have nostalgia remembering when I read them all for the first time. It was, a busy part in my life, and I can think back to that part of my life when I think about these books, and it just reminds me of that. I was actually starting grad school when I read these books for the first time. So maybe that brings back nightmares and not good thoughts, but I'm just kidding. Anyway, Midnight Sun, it's Twilight, only from Edward's perspective. Stephenie Meyer had put out the first couple chapters of this. It was like a fan fiction when the Twilight craze happened, and it was on her website, and then she took it down. She got really mad because it had been leaked or something like that. She swore that she wasn't actually going to release it, but then she did, then she did. And I'm sure we all have our own thoughts on that, but I liked it. It made Edward's character, a little more likable. He is not my favorite character. You understand his motivations a little bit more. I don't know. It was fun to read. It was a good read. I haven't read it again since then, and probably won't. I don't even own any of the Twilight books anymore. I got rid of all of my copies. So, but if you're into Twilight and you haven't read Midnight Sun, I highly recommend, because it's just a fun time to read, although it is very long. Very thick book. Why? I don't know. But, if you need something to do over a couple day period, check out Midnight Sun. And those are all the books that I read in November of 2020. Let me know, have you read any of these books? What did you think? All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.